Happy Friday, everyone. It's Rod with Pow Group. Welcome back on the Pursuit of Wealth. Today is May 3rd, 2024, and with me again today is Morgan Fox, Political Director at NORML. Great to have you back on, Morgan, and thanks for taking the time to meet with me today. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So April 30th, rescheduling news. Obviously, that's something we will be discussing a lot about. We'll be talking about that a lot today, and rightly so. The industry was extremely happy. A lot of people are saying it's not enough, though, and we've talked about this before, but needless to say, a historic day for our industry. But while there's still lots of work to do, I want to congratulate everyone that helped get this across the finish line in our industry. On behalf of myself and the entire community, I also want to thank you, Morgan, as well, for your hard work and all of the staff at NORML. And I've donated, full disclosure, I've donated in the past to NORML, and I'll continue to do so in the future. As like we said before, there's still lots of work to do, but thank you very much for a job well done.
We definitely appreciate it. So much work has gone into this for decades now. I think it's a really important symbolic move in that it is really indicative of a greater recognition by federal officials that cannabis does have medical value and does not belong in Schedule 1. But we obviously still have a long way to go. And I should point out that this move is not official yet. So this has to be submitted to the OMB, and then it has to go through a public comment period, and then another review period, at which point it could be potentially open to litigation in order to prevent it from being implemented. So we could potentially be looking at a multi-year process here just to get this motion passed. But hopefully, in the meantime, Congress is going to continue doing its job and getting closer and closer to removing cannabis from the schedule of controlled substances altogether.
Right. And for the comment period, I'm hearing that it could be 60 days, could be 90 days, maybe longer. But is that kind of what everybody should be expecting? I know that's something that comes up a lot. So is that 60 to 90 day sound correct to you?
I believe that it's 90 days for consideration, but it doesn't necessarily have to be before the public comment period is opened, and that lasts 60 days.
Okay, gotcha. And when it comes to the opposition, obviously there was a article out yesterday. MJ legalization opponents raise money for potential lawsuit against federal rescheduling move, and that's Sam. A smart approach to MJ to marijuana. So essentially, we knew this was going to happen, right? We knew there was going to be tons of opposition, and it came out like clockwork. So, are you worried about that at all? I know you said it could take multiple years. I'm hearing a lot of chatter saying that rescheduling is not enough either. Like we need descheduling, and this is something in our previous interviews that we had discussed as well. There's still lots of work to do, and in my opinion, and I believe it's your opinion as well, is that rescheduling isn't enough. We ultimately need to deschedule it. So with that being said, what are your chances? What do you think the chances are? What do you think the chances of that actually getting bypassed? And like you said, it could be a multi-year process that goes through the comment period. There's litigation. It takes a year or two. What are your thoughts on that? Like, could we see some sort of act from Congress? Could Congress act to remove it from the CSA, which they created in 1970, and then just bypass Schedule 3 altogether? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think to start off with, while any sort of litigation to try to stop this process or to slow it down is just going to waste resources on the part of the federal government and the American taxpayer. While it's disheartening in terms of the practical impact, I don't think that it's really too much to worry about, considering that the real practical impact of moving to Schedule 3 is not very large at all. Obviously, it's important for 280E, but in terms of criminalization, in terms of actual legalization, it really doesn't do too much. And in order for states to get in line with Schedule 3 and eliminate the conflict between federal law and state law as it currently exists, will require the FDA to approve cannabis, and it's not currently set up to do that. And even if it were, it would take multiple years and incredibly large amounts of resources to be able to actually accomplish that, given the existing structure. Right. Now, in terms of bypassing Schedule 3, I don't think that's going to come from the DEA. There are still a number of people within that agency that don't even want cannabis to move to Schedule 3, let alone to be removed from the schedule of controlled substances. So if we're talking about a unilateral move by the DEA to go farther than they've already gone, I don't really see that happening. Now, sometime in the future, the political environment in Washington could be such that an administration could put more pressure than it currently can on DEA to actually deschedule, but we just have no idea if that's ever going to come to pass, and I would consider it pretty unlikely. That being said, Congress is definitely moving in the right direction when it comes to descheduling and effectively regulating cannabis at the federal level. There are a number of bills that have already been introduced, and we just saw the reintroduction of the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act in the Senate with 18 original sponsors. The MORE Act is starting to make progress again after already being approved twice in the House. There are, a couple of other options out there. I don't think it's very likely that we're going to get anything passed in the current Congress, but this really does allow us to move the Overton window in the right direction, to start gaining more sponsors for the existing bills, to start having more nuanced conversations with members of Congress about exactly what federal cannabis law should look like, and pushing it farther in that direction.
Right. And it is an election year. So, as of, November, we might find out potentially the Dems take control of the House and the Senate, which, like you said, the CAOA was reintroduced, and Schumer and other Democratic senators filed a bill to federally legalize MJ. So as we know, it's been held up. A lot of these bills have been held up. So it'll be very telling to see what happens during the elections and what the outcome is of those results. But at the end of the day, there's still lots of work to do. Absolutely. I'm still kind of buzzing from the Schedule 3. It's definitely a step in the right direction, but I've got my Oilers jersey on as well. They're going to the next round. So celebrating in green and in Oilers fashion today. But that was actually going to be my next question, was some of the other bills that are circulating. So just to kind of drill that home a little bit more, I think there's 5 bills currently that I counted that are currently circulating through. Like, we have SAFER, we have the CAOA, MORE, HOPE, States Act. Is there any other ones, or can you comment on that a little bit?
In terms of what actually seems to be gaining the most support in Congress, the MORE Act and CAOA do seem to be leading the pack at the moment. Neither one of these bills are perfect, but at the same time, they do represent a focus on restorative justice when you're talking about legalizing cannabis, which I think is exactly what we need to be doing in order to undo some of the harms caused by the war on drugs, but also to be able to create a vibrant industry that supports small businesses. Now, there are also the States Act and the States Reform Act. There has been less talk about those at the moment, but I think that both of them also have some elements that would be useful to include in any sort of final cannabis policy reform legislation, particularly having extremely low tax rates. So, while, again, we're not going to see any of these bills move across the finish line this session, the very fact that they are being talked about a lot more, that we're gaining co-sponsors, is, I think, indicative of the general direction that Congress is going, and is going to position us very well in the next Congress to be able to not only gain more sponsors and co-sponsors, but also to be able to introduce these bills, or reintroduce them in many cases, a lot earlier in the session than sometimes we've seen in the past.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks for that. And then I posted a video recently, Tilray CEO, he's under the assumption, and I'm sure they have their legal team all over this, and essentially what they're looking to do is saying, through Schedule 3 recommendation getting approved by the DEA, from HHS recommendation, now the DEA agrees, if it actually gets enacted, they're under the assumption that Canadian companies would be able to sell into the US through medical channels. Is that how you understand it as well? And there's word that they said that it wouldn't, violate their NASDAQ listing, but is there anything that you have on that topic that you can share with our audience as well?
Well, it's a complicated topic, but I'm fairly skeptical of that approach. Not only, as I said, is the move to Schedule 3, if it even comes to fruition, could take years. I believe in order for that sort of international commerce to take place legally within the United States, it would have to be FDA approved, which could also take years. Now, it may be possible within a research context, but in terms of a commercial context, I think that there are significant barriers to that in place.
Yeah, he did say that it'd have to go through HHS, which FDA is an agency within that department, right? So it'll be interesting to see if what comes out of that. But one trend we're starting to see is, LPs are becoming MSOs, MSOs are becoming LPs, vice versa. So we had news that Curaleaf was going to be acquiring Northern Green Canada. So we're starting to see it on a smaller scale there, where MSOs are becoming producers in Canada. And then with the news with Canopy USA now acquiring, through a holdings company and exchangeable shares, a different class of shares, they're going to be acquiring acreage, U.S. assets, Wana and Jetty. What are your thoughts on Canopy USA? Is that something that you could see other companies in Canada following suit? And then, obviously it could take a year or two, maybe more, to get Schedule 3 enacted. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a trend that we could continue to see in the future?
I really have no thoughts on that.
No? Okay. And then like uplisting to the NYSE and the NASDAQ, I know we discussed this. Do you have any kind of insight there on what you think could help to get that across the finish line? I know Curaleaf, Boris Jordan, has been saying that he believes that they should soon be able to uplist to the U.S. major exchanges. Any comment there?
I mean, I think that it's entirely possible. I'm not exactly sure what would have to happen legally in order to allow that. But I think that it probably would have to require descheduling rather than a move to Schedule 3. Of course, that remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, honestly, I think that focusing on the stock moves, and I know that this is a financial show, is important, but it's definitely not where I'm focusing my work and efforts.
Absolutely. I had to ask because that's something that comes up a lot with my viewers, and myself included. We're the number one retail MJ community, so we're just trying to get everybody's questions answered. And I know that's something that I've been saying that I believe that what's going to happen is we're going to see. Well, in the chain of events, I said Schedule 3 announcement and approval by DEA. We got that as expected. Then I said we're more than likely going to see some sort of MJ banking, then uplisting to the NYSE and the NASDAQ, U.S. major exchanges, and then the potential for full-blown federal legalization, more than likely through descheduling, similar to Canada and Germany. But we got to get, my whole thought process with that, it was get the big Wall Street banks, the JP Morgans, the Morgan Stanley's positioned first before Schedule 3 actually gets enacted, and then we get full-blown descheduling. And I think markets, as I say, can go up, down, or sideways, right? So we need to be prepared for that, but also be prepared for a surprise. And what I think a lot of people aren't really understanding is that we could potentially see that surprise where this gets descheduled altogether, right? Because you're seeing a lot, even pro MJ people who are advocates for the industry, a lot of them are saying Schedule 3 might even make it worse, or while this great 280E goes away, like you mentioned, this isn't really solving the bigger problem. And a lot of the pro MJ advocates are saying that we need full-blown descheduling and treat it on the same level playing field as alcohol and tobacco. And on that topic, we talked about Canada and Germany, and then Canada, obviously being legal since 2018 at the federal level. What are your thoughts on international treaties with regards to the U.S. and the UN? Canada did it, so why can't the U.S.?
I don't think that being in contravention with a single convention is really going to be an issue in terms of cannabis policy reform in the United States. I think that we've already seen that the UN really did not go after the nations that have moved towards legalization or medical use. And I don't think that we're going to see that with the U.S. either. It could be used as an argument from some prohibitionists, but in terms of it being a serious consideration, I tend to be a little bit doubtful of that.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out at the end of the day. And then
I got to tip, man. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit over time.
Okay, no problem. Is that all the time for today?
Unfortunately, yeah, but happy to speak with you again anytime.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Sorry, you were cutting out there a little bit. I don't know if it was a poor internet connection on my end or your end, but I appreciate your insights and time today, Morgan. And thanks again for doing this, and look forward to having you back on in the future. I know the viewers really appreciate your updates, so keep up the great work.
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. Take care.